everyone. Welcome to Feminine Frequencies. And just want to say, Katie, hi, my co-host Katie.
Hi.
And we've got a wonderful group of people here. But before we start, I just want to talk about real briefly that Feminine Frequencies is a part of Hodge Pod, which is a podcast. It's a home for conversations that don't fit neatly into a box because the most important ideas really rarely do. So Feminine Frequencies exist to amplify the voices and visions of women. We believe the future isn't louder or more competitive, it's more connected. Each episode explores what becomes possible when women lead, when communities replace hierarchies, and when the goal shifts from winning to building something that lasts. We are not here to critique the old model. We are here to show you what the new one looks like and introduce you to the women already living it. And the Hodge Pod started as this idea of, if you look at the logo, it's a soup, it's a bowl of soup. And Katie and I are the broth, and you guys are the ingredients. We pour in and we stir it up and we see what we get. And it's such a nice feminine principle of coming to the table, sharing nourishment and combining maybe ingredients we didn't think might go together, but they do, which creates an intersection of ideas that we can all build from. And I think that's a pretty feminine principle, in our thought processes. So I want to start out with Katie. I'm going to introduce everybody here today, and then I'm going to hand it off to Katie for a minute. So our illustrious women guests here today are people that we all know and love. We've worked with them and been with them in the world of music. Alexis Cole is a New York-based jazz vocalist. Hi, Alexis. An educator with a sophisticated style and warm, resonant voice that has taken her from concert halls to the Kennedy Center, now renamed the Kennedy Center, to stages across Asia and Europe. A professor of jazz voice at the Manhattan School of Music. Her students have gone on to win the Grammy, the Sarah Vaughan competition, and the Ella Fitzgerald competition. And in 2020, she founded jazzvoice.com, an online educational community connecting vocalists and students with some of the finest jazz singers working today, and co-founded the Virginia Beach Vocal Jazz Summit. She is a woman who has spent her career not just building her own artistry, but building spaces for others to grow. So thanks for being here, Alexis. Mary Foster Conklin is a New York-based jazz vocalist and radio host praised by the Washington Post as a sensitive artist with a wide-ranging, boldly colored voice and an open ear for offbeat material, which we all love here. A multi-award-winning singer with 5 acclaimed recordings, she's been described as a master storyteller with a rare talent for uncovering lesser-known gems of the great American songbook. Since 2016, she has hosted A Broad Spectrum, which is a weekly radio show on WFDU 89.1 FM, which celebrates women composers and lyricists, making her one of the most consistent and committed advocates for women in jazz radio. And thank you for that, Mary. Good to have you here.
Yeah.
And we're moving on to Ayelet Rose Gottlieb. Jerusalem-born and Montreal-based, Ayelet Rose Gottlieb is a composer, vocalist, and improviser. Described by the New York Times as a commanding vocalist, her music weaves together jazz, Middle Eastern, and Jewish traditions, contemporary, composition, and deep improvisation into something that is entirely her own. She is a certified deep listening practitioner in the tradition of Pauline Oliveras. She is also the founder of the Orchard of Pomegranates, a feminist creative community and record label dedicated to holding space for artists in their most vulnerable creative moments. She co-produced our very own Katie Bull's most recent album, The Hope Etudes, and her work across more than 11 albums reflects a lifelong commitment to collaboration as a living practice. The name itself carries meaning. The orchard is not one tree, it is many growing together, tending a shared ground. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Katie, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful. And I can hear how all of these women now in this room have so many intersections. I can hear it and I want to know more what they are. Yeah. And
Mm.
I feel like we should say, Ellen, you have held a space, and that's what drew me to you when we started talking again in so many different ways over the years. And I'm realizing that I've connected to you women before I knew I was connecting to you. I mean, I heard your music, Alexis, when I was doing some writing, but I had already heard it. Mary, I had heard your music and on your radio. And Ayelet, I had heard you, I think at one of the conferences, and didn't even realize, that these were sort of how things were being shaped, because I think, Ellen, you might have been behind some of those things, some of those spaces where the women were coming together. And I guess maybe we'll hear more about that too. So, yeah, I'm excited to hear and learn. I'm here to learn. I've held some spaces as well, not always focused on women, but focused on these principles that we are all caring about, building community. So, yeah, let's hear it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So when you look at the structures that you've built, everybody here, the communities, the labels, the collectives, you recognize that principle at work. And when did you first decide, consciously or not, to build something cooperative instead of competitive?
Mm.
Anybody can jump right in there.
Well, I kind of got back into radio by happenstance. My good friend David Kenny, who has hosted a radio show on WBAI for 40 years. WBAI is very political. It's part of the Pacifica Group and a very political radio station. And 11 years ago, 12 years ago, International Working Women's Day fell on a Sunday. And the higher ups just decided that they wanted no men in the studio at the time. And David did not want to give up his show. And so he volunteered. He goes, I have a friend who can sit in for me and she'll do my radio show. I had 3 days to come up with, a woman-based radio show. And actually it was easy and fun. I had been doing some collaborative work with David for many years. And I had done radio in college. And so I stepped in, and the first Broad Spectrum was broadcast in 2015, and David got an immediate sub so he could go on vacation that year. So I did another one. I did several that year, and then the following year it was during the jazz, what was to become the Jazz Congress. It was still called Jazz Connect, I think, at the time, which was a coming together of the jazz community and press and radio people in early January. I had an interview with WFDU, and when they asked me what kind of show I wanted to do, I said they were looking for DJs on their HD2 channel. And I said, I want to do a jazz show. When they said, what kind of a jazz show, I suddenly said, this was just to make a different flavor. And I just said, how about women composers and lyricists? Call it a broad spectrum. And to continue that. And then he talked me into a 4-hour slot, and there I was.
Wow.
And a month later, I was on the air during the tail end of fundraising. And there I went. And it was much more innocent. Hillary was still a candidate. It was a much more whimsical. It was not meant to be anything really remotely political. And then the world changed.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly my show, which was just, a different flavor jazz show, became political because of the times.
Mm.
And then suddenly I was on a bus to Washington to march. And all of a sudden, and I didn't have to say a word. But suddenly, what I was doing had a very different significance. And at one point, all I said was I was knitting a hat. I was going to get on a bus. And I got a blistering email from someone who just said, love your music, hate your politics, you've lost a listener. And it was like, what kind of betrayal
Yeah.
is this? I said, I've never lied about what and now it's just like, hey man, I'm just playing records. You know what I mean? But suddenly it became, and then, everything exploded. And suddenly, the responsibility of every time you go on mic, there's things to do, things to say. And I had a platform already because I was a huge follower of a woman historian producer named Rosetta Wrights, who had created the Rosetta label back in the 80s, I think, 70s and 80s. And that was my initiation to women composers and lyricists, because that introduced me to records of Una Mae Carlisle, pianist, Mary Lou Williams, Valida Snow, the trumpeter, and so many more, Alberta Hunter, Lovey Austin, all these women, both blues women and instrumentalists and vocalists. And that had always been my mission. And also there are two focuses of a broad spectrum. It's women composers and lyricists, and then vocalists, who are given short shrift in the jazz world just because they think we're stupid, because we're not real musicians. So it was kind of like, okay. So that's where it began, and has been my platform for the last 10 years.
I think what you're doing is really important, because I know all of us would probably agree here. We've seen it, the sort of undermining and disrespect for women in music in general, but we've seen it in jazz. I mean, I remember an IAJE conference. I was standing. It was Ingrid Jensen and the women's big band. What was the name of it again? It was
Diva.
Diva. And I was standing next to these two guys, and she's playing her heart out. And the guy says, not bad for a girl. And I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. But so we've had that kind of abuse for a long time, and also just the amount of people that have not been recognized who've contributed so much. And I know when I was asked to contribute to this book that was about the first women's jazz festival, and and it was what astounded me was that in it said that women would, because the men wouldn't hire a lot of the women, so the women formed their own groups in order to do that, and then they were put down because, like, oh well, that's because it's a subgroup, and it's like that you can't win, right? It's like, so you won't hire us, we form our own groups. Oh, but we're lesser now. And it's just been this thing that's gone on. I mean, I think it's gotten a little bit better. I mean, you probably know more than I do, Mary, because you're involved in the music, but I would hope that it is moving in a different direction at this point.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely.
And also, Mary, it sounds like you had an awakening yourself, which is what I'm hearing. Is like you were in this place of, I just want to offer this music and, kind of just be in the music. And then you had an awakening. And I think that shift for you is something I have a feeling we all share in some way, kind of a moment of going from, I'm doing my thing, I'm in this place, and then actually I now want to start proactively making spaces. I'm curious if that's true, but I mean, you did that.
Well, the penultimate album, when Photographs came out and I played Birdland, there was this, I did Long as You're Living, 5/4 Blues, Oscar Brown Jr., but one of the refrains, we had changed the wording so it would say, "Sister, this is your life." And that sat with me, "Sister, this is your life." And suddenly there was this thing like, I suddenly wanted to, I don't want to say like wear my feminism proudly, but suddenly it was not going to be, I wasn't going to necessarily be so polite. And it was funny because, I'm not a young singer anymore. And suddenly, I was doing some luncheon, and I had come back. It was the year of the march, and I was doing something on the focus was Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, and Mike Stoller and his wife Corky are incredible supporters of Planned Parenthood.
Mm.
And and Jerry wrote "I'm a Woman," WOMEN, and I just made mention of the march and mention of their activism. And a woman came up to me after the concert and said, you had us in the palm of your hands until you started talking about that. And like I was 12 years old. Mm. And I just went, you've got to be kidding. You're forcing me to, and all I could say to her was, I'm terribly sorry you feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in this spirit of wanting to bring people together, which Katie and I talk about, is a very feminine principle. I mean, an indigenous principle as well, where people all come together to. Where did some of you get this? It sounds like what Katie said was some of it was intuitive for you, and I'm wondering if the rest of you was it a conscious experience? Was it intuitive? Was it just the path just led that direction? How was that for you?
I love that you said before to create how did you say it, communal space instead of a competitive space or something like that, which is really the intention behind Orchard of Pomegranates and really anything that I have been making. Orchard became a thing for me when I moved to Montreal, and I was feeling really strongly how, because I'd lived in quite a lot of places, and how all of these people that I met along the road, how they were connected and how I could bring them together and share those connections with my community here or with my new community that was forming. And it actually started with Jay Clayton, who came over to record with me, and I organized a workshop for her, and suddenly this energy became around it. And then we did a co-teaching little intensive for a few days here in my house, and that was the first Orchard event, really. So Jay was really instrumental in starting that, and I feel like she was a real community builder as well. So I'm grateful to her for that. And it felt like the name kind of came to me on a little walk that I took. And it comes from the Song of Songs, which I composed many years before. And it just felt very resonant for me and very juicy. It felt like something that I could sense the name, I could feel it in my senses. And it became a roof to basically everything that I offer in the world, that is communal, that is part of, making spaces for other people to create, as well as for myself.
Yeah, I think there's something very satisfying about that. I think many of us, have our individual careers, but it is always more enjoyable to share it with others. I think, for some of us, maybe not others, but that's how I feel. It's like, it's like you want to all party together on it. It's like, hey, we all created this together. It is never one, when people go, I did this, it's like, no, there's always a bunch of people behind you. And when you brought up Jay Clayton, I mean, the first time I saw Jay Clayton talk about a community, it was in Chicago. That's where I was, born and grew up. And she was with Kirk Newrock. And there was the singers. I know you all know because you don't know her. But for the people that don't know, so she was in this group of singers, and they were singing this free music. And she was the soloist in it. And she blew my mind because everything she was doing was like thoughts I'd had before. That's exactly what I was sort of doing in my own little world. And I came up to her, and that's how I first got to know her. Was just, and we made a connection. I ended up on the West Coast, and we, but she was always like that, bringing people together. Mm-hmm. And I think that, that we're attracted to that because that's who we are, Mm-hmm. But yes, she was definitely somebody who I think is a thread through many of the jazz singers, for sure.
Yeah, I was in one of those groups when I was 14 with Kirk Nurok as part of that world. So yeah, I actually sang with him as well, and with Jay with him. What I heard you say, Ayelet, and I'm sensing it also from Mary, and I can't wait to hear from Alexis about this, is this language of sensing. That you felt it, you had an intuition. And yes, as Ellen is saying, that you were connecting to relationships that mattered, and then values that mattered, and that's what was driving you. And I just think that's such a unique feminine frequency kind of energy, to drive. You have the intellect, and I've had the privilege of working with you, and your vision and your clarity and your intellectual sort of pedagogy, as we could say, in some settings, is so clear. And yet when I'm with you and when you're working, I can feel the sensing and the freedom, the flow of the feeling is so in the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think that as we search for how we can move forward to change these unhealthy paradigms that we know exist, I'm searching for what are the qualities, what's the granular differences in what we're doing and what you're doing. It's just beautifully loving. The first time I met Ayelet, it was because she was performing. I think you were 26.
Something like that.
You
Yeah,
were
I was 20 something.
You were, what was that? It was at Chez Suzette, right? Was that?
I think so. It was part of IAJE, and actually, I met you and Jay in the same at the same time.
Yeah, and you it just absolutely exuded a glowing, loving energy to the audience. You just there was no ego. It was such a healthy ego. It was in service of love. And I swear, I just ran after you, caught up with you in the bathroom and said, "Excuse me," but that was absolutely so beautiful. So what Ellen is saying about we're drawn to these things, it's like, I agree. I was drawn to that in you. And I do believe that that's the paradigm. We're trying to put out a frequency that connects in that really caring, compassionate way, authentically, not just performatively, but for real.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really exciting to me.
I think this is what feminine leadership looks like. It's not one person. And that's why I think it's really hard sometimes for us to realize, or the societies to realize, when women are leaders, they're leaders in groups more often, because we work together. And so all of you are leaders. You have leadership abilities, but you connect and collaborate. So you don't it's interesting because the Tao talks about that in terms of leadership, which is a principle of, you don't lead by this, you lead by being back here and inspiring. So this is a really almost a spiritual principle. I don't mean religious, I mean a spiritual principle as well. So, but I want to, Alexis, you're awful quiet. Jump in here with something.
I'm just listening. I'm usually such a talker, so I'm really glad I've been able to just be a listener for a little bit, not to dominate. But a couple of things struck me while we were talking. One was how Mary was saying how her first broad spectrum was kind of an accident, and I love that because jazz voice was also kind of an accident. And I also love what Ellen just said about leading in groups, because with the Vocal Jazz Summit, Liz Liz Bridge, Sibel Galindez, and I have really formed like the most amazing little triumvirate. And I can't imagine the summit happening without the three of us. We just have become this incredible, team leadership team. And we had a retreat last year and really thought about the long vision of the summit. And also this
Can you
year,
tell us a little bit
oh, of course,
for
yeah,
people who don't know what the summit is? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
of course, yeah. Um, uh, Maybe I'll start with jazz voice if that's okay, because
Hmm.
it's hard to talk
Yeah.
about one without the other. But anyway, I will double back and tell you about the summit. But just this year's summit, I really tried to look for ways to empower people to do things. I got some of our people to host the Zooms, some old Jazz Voice members to host the Zooms. I had other people, oh, why don't you host the jam session, and just figuring out ways to pass on that leadership to you know make it more communal, to find so that everybody's part of it. We also did for the first year, Mary's presented at the summit and on Jazz Voice. And this year
Oh,
on Sunday, we had one of the things that people responded was that we have so much knowledge and, there's so many accomplished people who come to the summit. Could you make a space for them to share with each other? And so this year, that Sunday was all about that. And we gave 30-minute slots. Judy Niemak was there. She did one. We had one on Alexander Technique with David Jernigan, and one we had a group of women. Judy was on it. She's not in her 80s, but the other two singers were in their 80s, Libby York and Maya Raymond, and talking about career longevity. So it was really this great day of sharing within the community for the community. But
I
anyway,
attended virtually, and I have to say it was a roaring success. And I wrote
thank you.
Alexis afterwards on the stuff that I was able to attend remotely, and just went out of the park. It was fabulous.
Thank you so much. And you've
Wow.
been there, you've seen how it's grown. So it's really that I was really delighted to get that note from you, Mary. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so Jazz Voice, much like Mary said, Mary's first experience, it was kind of an accident. It was during COVID, and I had to teach online. I was teaching at SUNY Purchase then, and I'd taken a few lessons online. I don't know if you guys ever did, but they weren't great for me. And I thought, oh no, we're gonna have to teach online. There's a drag. But then when I had to teach my, 15 students or whatever online, it was like the ones who did well in the studio just kept doing well, and the ones who were, a drag were still a drag. And it was like it was like pretty much the same. It was great. Only I could see right in their mouths, it was awesome. So and I didn't have to play piano, so I could just make notes and focus on their singing. And it had as many it was a trade-off of benefits and liabilities, which I did not anticipate, but it
Mhm.
was great. And I thought, so I was in my cabin, I was alone, and like, when you're alone, you just like kind of spin out with your ideas sometimes, and like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. And I just thought, oh my God, if people, all these singers are home right now, and all these people, everybody's home wanting to like learn an instrument and work on their singing or whatever. And wouldn't it be great if somebody could make like a website to connect singers and teachers for lessons? And that was, who could I share this idea with, was my question. And it was like burning inside me. And I was like, this is such a great idea. This has got to happen. And also singers need the bread. And also I need the bread, but that wasn't part of the conversation yet. I was just had this idea,
Mhm.
and I was like, who could enact this idea? And after a few days of this, it was like Jonah and the whale. And I was like, oh no, it's me, isn't it? And I was like, and I couldn't let it go. And then since I was alone, I literally, guys, I just have never been that passionate about something in my whole life. And and luckily I had a meeting once I got this idea. Oh, there was, and like Mary's accidental thing, the kind of accidental piece was that there was an innovation grant from my high school, the World School of the
oh,
Arts in Miami, for $1,500. Wow. And I was like, oh, I really need that money. That would be so great. And I'll make this website kind of fits in there because it was all about people pivoting, and I'll get the website up in time to apply for the grant, and the website will be live in time for the grant deadline, which was a magic miracle because things are much more easily accomplished with the deadline, of course, as we all know. So yeah, and I was at the cabin, and my across the street neighbor, she's an oboist who has a double reed ensemble that she writes a lot of grants for, so she helped me with it. And I got the site up, in May of 2020. Yep. And applied for the grant. I did not win the grant, but instead, like, I got a whole new life.
Wow. God.
And a kind of interesting. Oh, and then as part of that, I went to a meeting of an entrepreneurship incubator in Austining, where I was living. It was virtual, and during that conversation, we decided to make it that a better model would be a subscription-based lessons or classes model, which is what Jazz Voice really is now. We do some private lesson business, but it's like, is it even 5% of our annual, you know, activity? No. So it turned out to be great, and it really reminded me. Ellen, can you remind me? Were you a big part of the Jazz Vocal Coalition?
Yeah, I was one of the co-founders, and I was the president.
Right,
And
that's what I thought.
very much like you, it's like I had a million ideas, and a lot of the things that you all are doing have been done before.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that we did was do a lot of stuff online before it was, the hip thing to do. I actually got a connection with CD Baby, so that every person who had a CD on our site, CD Baby would give us a certain amount of money if they bought through CD Baby. And we did amazing things. I don't want to go into my thing because I want you to continue with yours, but yeah, it was something that happened, and I think we started that in around 2002. So,
Alexis, I think that's where I met you. You were
Right.
in
Well,
school. You were at Queens College, and
right. I was in
and
sixth. Yeah, and I
I
was
think
at the
that's where I
Living
met.
Church.
I think I met all of you mostly through that, because I remember listening to everybody's recording on when we had different things that came up. So, and I know we did that at the IAJE. I hosted that. It was my idea too, to put together Mark Murphy, John Hendricks, Sheila Jordan, Jay Clayton, Kitty Margolis, and Kurt Elling all together to have a conversation about where is the future of jazz vocals.
Yeah, that
And
was a turning point. I was there for me. I was so inspired by that panel. Many
Yeah.
different feelings came up. We've talked about some of that, but it was just so important, so important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was, to me, it was, and part of the reason I did I was interested in doing this, by the way, was because, and this speaks to Mary Conklin, is I really got tired of in the IAJE. Maybe some of you don't know this, Mary, you probably do, but there was hardly anything for vocalists in there at all. And I got really tired of that, because I was like, why are we not being represented? And so that's why I started to think it was not just myself, but, I had other people in the board our board that we created this so that we could have a bigger voice in the IAJE. And we did. After that panel, I had the president of the IAJ come up to me and go, "Wow, this is great. We should do more of this." And it's like, yeah. And so, I mean, that was because I really cared about our representation. And let's face it, the majority of singers are women, truly. I mean, so there was a woman component for me too. It's like I wanted these women, like Mary, you said, it was like they treated us like we were stupid. They did. And some of them still do. And I got tired of that too, as Miss Mary did. So
it was also, but what is also wonderful, I mean, I have so many friendships from that began because of that East-West collaboration. It introduced me to Mark Winkler out in Los Angeles, and Judy Wexler, and to you, and a whole bunch. And I was in the midst of a project of a West Coast composer. This was the Matt Dennis project. But, and I've maintained contact, or we've crossed paths in the last 2 decades. Is that amazing or what? And then and Alexis, and just it's it's like the jazz tree. It's got a common beginning. And
I just want to tie this up in a bow, but I was the vice president of the New York chapter for a few years. And I was living during that time. I was at Queens College and I was the music director at Yon Hoo's Presbyterian Church. And we were doing jazzvoice.com. As you know, I was hosting classes on how to make your CD, and people would start, we'd have a different person sing in at the beginning of each meeting, and we were basically doing that then, there, and then years later to come back to this idea, on my own, first with the lessons idea, but then thinking like, oh, what do singers need? And then once I started, I was like, this feels really familiar. I've been doing this forever. This is who I am. I present things and I connect people. This is who I am. And so thank you, Ellen, for giving me that start. And also in 2019, which is before 2020, when I started before I started Jazz Voice, I met with the producers of the Vocal Jazz Summit in Virginia Beach. And we came up with this idea, and they had asked me to be the artistic director. They knew me because of the Army, because I was the big band singer in the West Point band.
Yeah.
And I had done like an educational thing for them down at Little Creek Music School in Virginia Beach. And they, you have to think, do these ideas come from nowhere? They had the vision for this festival and they wanted me to be involved. And I did that thing where even though you feel like imposter syndrome or who me really, I just said, yes, of course, I'd love to do it. And then a year later, I created Jazz Voice and kind of became the person, like the perfect person to start a festival for amateur, semi-pro, and professional vocalists. So I think it's cool to be having this conversation now because what Ellen started impacted me so much, and what we're doing with the summit and Jazz Voice is impacting so many other lives, and it just cascades. And if there's one takeaway, and hearing Katie talk about meeting Ayelet, it's just we're really interconnected. We're affecting each other's lives through our work, and it's so wonderful. And also, it is Ellen, said what is true, which is that most vocalists are women, and I just having spent my whole career working, with men primarily as a performer and in the Army, certainly, I'm just delighted beyond the moon, over the moon, to be working mostly with women now. It's just, my life is infinitely better. It's just great. Everybody's so
That is
kind
so
and thankful.
That's just absolutely beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, and I think that's so astute how you're connecting it to affecting each other's lives, connecting in, and I keep hearing themes of friendship and how that is the generating, and also what I'm hearing is this group in this room is willing to be really explicit and out there about what we're committed to. And I think honest and open and direct about what the problems are, but really focused on making change. And I think that in previous generations, it was maybe couldn't be the same. I remember even talking once to Sheila Jordan, another mentor who did absolutely so much of this, and with Jay in collaboration. We all know Sheila Jordan. She said when I talked to her about, because she was my mentor really since I was a baby, to be honest, she knew my dad. She said, that's all happening, but we're just going to make the music. That's what we're going to do. I'm not going to talk about it too much. We know it's happening, but we're just going to make the music. And I thought, yeah, that's an act of essentially resistance in a sense, like focus, do it, make the space. But I do find that the evolution of that and what she made space for us is that we can actually now, I don't think it's a coincidence because of the political times we're living in, we can use our voice to talk about what those problems were, coming back to Mary and your awakening, I do have a stand here, and I'm going to create something that's explicitly clear. This is cooperation. This is co-creation. These are real friendships, not just networking for business. These are real friendships, that's like gives me energy when I hear that.
I just wanted to interject that, the main reason I was interested in doing the Jazz Vocal Coalition was because I really felt, it came from a completely different place for me. I mean, all these other things, of course, that wrapped around, but it was because I really wanted people to be empowered together and to work together, and the camaraderie and the spiritual aspect of that we are all helping each other. And I used to say, because there are situations, let's be honest, where it doesn't work well with everyone. And I had to remind people, everybody's going to have their day in the sun if we all help each other to rise. And that is a very difficult concept for some people. And that's something that I think I would say for anybody doing this kind of work to just keep focusing on that as much as you can, because idealistically, and I think all of us here are probably pretty idealistic people, we want to work in that capacity, but we also have to remember that that is not everybody's motivation. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was astounding. Maybe I grew up in Chicago. I'm not that naive, but I was naive in that way, thinking that everybody would just love this experience and want to be a part of it. And I think that's something that I had to learn on the other end of the spectrum, is that you have to choose wisely who you work with.
I have to
say that.
Interject that I'm sitting there going, oh my God, 2002, 2004. It's a very pivotal time. Another thing that came into the mix for me was that was the first time I met Rhiannon, who member of the Voicestra, who worked with Bobby McFerrin, and the focus for the first time was not just improvisation, but the vocalist as a musician, as an instrument. Mm-hmm. And all of that circle singing stuff and all of those exercises and improvisations where vocalists were put together as instruments to come up with things, the mystery band and this kind of stuff. And Mark Murphy had taught some of that. Sheila had taught some of that, but Rhiannon, it really was her focus. And the gatherings of the New York jazz community, I was interacting with vocalists in a totally different way. And it was really like making stone soup or something.
Yeah.
And everybody had a texture and a voice and a skill set as far as what, some people were more lyric based, others were composers, others were instrumentalists who sang on the side, but it changed everything because vocalists are so pitted against one another to compete for slots, compete for jobs. And here was a very fertile environment where suddenly we were collaborating like musicians do. We were jamming like musicians do. And what a revelation that was for me. And that also and we met at Kate Geller's loft for a long time while she was still in New York, continuing to do the exercises, continuing to work together. And that also formed friendships, alliances, and fostered mutual respect in a way that it wasn't just like, competing for slots on a gig.
Right.
And that to me also was a big game changer that came along about the same time.
It's absolutely incredible.
So I don't know, I'm going to throw this in here because I don't know if you all know this, but before Voicestra was formed, Bobby McFerrin was looking for some singers to workshop that because he was formulating it, just like we're talking about. He had an idea. And he chose 10 singers to go up to New York and work with him every single day for several weeks or a couple weeks, or I don't know how long it was. I can't remember now. But and I was one of those singers. We had to send in a tape, and he chose us to come up there. And that experience for me was exactly where I wanted to be and where I'd always wanted to be, meeting Jay Clayton prior to that meeting. And the way that he worked with people, and Katie and I were talking about this earlier, is he had the feminine principle in the way that he works as a man, and that I agree with you, Mary. That changed a lot of the way people viewed singers, because when I first came into things, my first band wasn't even a typical jazz band. I was singing fusion and doing instrumental stuff in the early 70s. And, and I would say, hey, why don't we do more of this? And they'd be, what? So I think even that principle was one of the things for vocalists that made a change in how we perceived each other and how we move forward. And now we see that there's a great result. And Rhiannon has been a very main person in bringing that together as well as Bobby. So I totally agree with you on that. That's been a very important aspect of the changes in the vocal community.
Totally agree. Go ahead.
People were doing circle singing at the Vocal Jazz Summit this year for the first time, like breaking out in the lobby and stuff. It was really cool. This is the first time I've seen that, because there's not 100% crossover of those communities necessarily.
Yeah,
but it was cool to see them there. Yeah, old and young. It was great.
It's been a real interesting experience for my ears to do the radio show, because it has definitely exposed me to how wide the jazz umbrella has become. Because it really, really runs the gamut from way left of center, classical bass, just, and to, Great American Songbook, traditional pop, trad jazz, all of that. It was, and it's just, I've had waking dreams where I wake up going, are you playing enough Carla Bley?
Yeah.
Are you really? I was like, where does that come from? But also, it's changed my perspective that, of generosity as opposed to jealousy, where someone has a new recording or a new project, and instead of going, that bitch, how did she get the funding? The kind of stuff that, I'm sorry to say, goes through my mind. But at the same time, now I get so excited. I love being the cheerleader. And when some are, and especially with younger artists, and they reach out to me and go, I have a new project. And I'm just like, that's great, send it. And I don't wait for I get serviced by a lot of promoters, but it gets to the point where I make it my business to follow artists. And if they can't afford a promoter, if they're not using a promoter, I will, make it my business to either reach out to the artist directly or, get the product myself, because it needs to be heard. And I hear from promoters about my show going, because of you, I was introduced to this one and that one. And because of you, I get to hear people I would never have heard. And to me, that is just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And
I hear a lot of crossover from what you're doing and Ayelet. Sorry, Ellen.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of going on the same thread as you. I was going to say, Ayelet, that's kind of where you're right in there. You and with Katie, with the project she's doing and the things you do. Can you speak a little bit, because you're right in that area?
Yeah, I hearing you all talk, I'm thinking about Bell Hooks and her. I just recently reread the Feminism is for Everybody.
I just got that.
Did you? Oh, that's funny.
That's the frequency. It's in my purse.
Amazing. It's so wonderful and inclusive. I feel like for me, creating a feminist space doesn't mean excluding men. But actually allowing them to step into a feminist space and not to have to be the carriers of the torch, but rather to allow for this communal held space. And she speaks a lot about sisterhood, and I feel like that's at the core of everything that we're all doing. For me, part of
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just think of Carla Bley and how many musicians she gave positions to, men who affected them forever. Arturo O'Farrell, Joe Lovano. I will shut up now.
And Betty Carter did the same thing.
Yeah.
But I love Ayelet, and I'm sure that those men carry it too, the ones you're talking about, Mary, that they have within them a willingness to do that. You invite it, you meet them, and then they learn, and we come from them. And there are men in your roster of
Yeah.
records, and you're a beautiful community, which is also, by the way, Alexis, I don't know if you know, but the Orchard is online as well. And
Yeah.
it's like such an amazing place to learn and to communicate and to know about people's projects. And I think it also is a community that addresses energetically where the competition might live. It's kind of like an elixir for that. Because the
Mm.
more you are there, the more whatever that stuff is just honestly melts away because you just feel the kindredness and you
Mm.
feel like the sustenance that you can get from being in that space. And I mean, Isla, did you make that decision consciously to say, I will find men that carry this kind of capacity, or did it just happen because of, intuition and who you are?
I
And
think I think when I was starting the orchard, it was just before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, everything became online, and
yeah.
it became very clear to me that I want to have it be women focused and led primarily by women, but it was very trendy at the time to make everything for women
Mm,
only, or for
right.
women, or you know not non-gender conforming individuals,
Mm-hmm.
but not for men. And I made the choice then to not to invite everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but to also name the space a feminist space, so that
Mm-hmm.
the men who come know that they're welcome, and also that this is a different kind of space for
Mm-hmm.
them to walk into.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily male dominant, but just male inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really, like, uh, there's quite a few men in the community. They're definitely a minority. They're often the only man in the room, which is an experience that we all know very well as women, and they don't know very well as men. So it's a nice, refreshing flip. Um, and it's sometimes, things arise from that dynamic of allowing them into the room. And then I need to adjust, and then I need to, like, tweak the language and, think about it. But I find that conversation interesting. And like the Bell Hooks book, Feminism is for Everybody. And I truly believe that. And I want to include men in the conversation. I think the conversation won't change until men become part of it.
Mm, right on. I'm with you. I am
Hmm.
so with you. And I was raised many years by a very feminist man.
Mm.
Solo in the 1960s is when that started. And, but then came to understand why my mother had to do her thing at that time. And, it gave me a lens on what women were struggling with and
Hmm.
why some of the brave ones did have to assert themselves in certain ways and change their roles, their gender roles, and that men did have the capacity to be actually, in a very primary way, compassionate, nurturing, all the things that society sort of says, well, that's what the women do. And your
Mm.
space is so much like that. There's so much fluidity for everyone to sort of exchange, be in an exchange.
Hmm.
Really. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's
Yeah,
really, really authentic. Yeah.
that's the idea, is to allow for all the voices to come into the conversation, as
Mm-hmm.
long as they're respectful and as long as they leave space for other voices.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't
I
think,
think by creating the container,
Mm-hmm.
you create the space for that to be a reality.
and I don't think competition is a bad word.
Yeah, we have
It's
to
the
Mm.
thing
redefine
that you
it.
strive to be better.
Mm-hmm.
It is the nature of jazz, the cutting contests, and you know, that can you handle it? Can you handle it? Do you know the bridge? Are you with me? Can you do it in that key? Can you change at the time? I mean, that kind of thing where it's play. I
Mm.
don't want to say that this feminism has soft, comfortable edges. It's a safe space. No, I mean, it's cutting edge in that you're in the moment and it's composition on the fly kind of thing, as it should be.
Yeah.
But inclusion,
Right.
although I'm sorry to say, it really never gets old. I still get, clueless correspondence from promoters and throwing projects at me. This is a cure for cancer, blah, 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 blah. And I look at the song list and I write them back and I say, congratulations on the new release. And I don't see any women writers or composers represented on this project. It really will not fit the format of the show. And they are like flabbergasted. I'm sorry to forget it's old. Or still people who come up and go, I've been doing this show for 10 years. And they go, now, what is it on your show? You have just women? And it's kind of like women writers. That's it. Women writers. I'm not sure why that takes a minute to sink in. Which is, and all I can really do is just kind of, sorry you feel that way, or let me just reiterate and step back. I'm not gonna waste energy with that kind of stuff. But it does tell me immediately that the person who is corresponding with me is a moron.
Right.
I had a guy, last year, we actually had a lot of, like, a record number of men attend the Vocal Jazz Summit. And this year, I call everybody back once the early bird tickets are sold. He came last year, you're planning to come this year. And he says, well, it's really kind of a girls' club. And I was like, no, we had this person and this person, this person. And we always have some male artists. We do that really on purpose. We have old and young, black and white, male, female. Like, we really try. We only have like 6 to 8 presenters, but we really on purpose mix it up. But anyway, we're talking and I'm like, this is my whole life. My whole life, I've been the only, it's a boys club and I'm the only girl. So I'm sorry you feel that way, but like, welcome to my world. Like, and we're like actively trying to be inclusive. They're not,
right.
I don't care if I'm there. I that's been staying with me the summit was great. Everybody has a good time. The men are great who come. This one person said one thing, but I'm just like, wow, that was just, and he just said that out loud.
Well, maybe that speaks to the fact that how difficult it is to make this change because, hey, you don't even see that women have been part of your club for so long and we've adapted. Now it's your turn to adapt. I mean, and like you said, we're trying to do it in a way where we're, like Ayelet says, she's trying to be inclusive to everybody. And, I think, and maybe I'm wrong about this because I'm not in the younger generation at this point, but I think it's a little bit changed maybe with the younger folks. They're a little bit more. Is that true?
I think that's true, but then I hear from my students that it's not.
I have students that are undergrads as well, Alexis, at New York University, and I have similar interesting. Some of them are consciously, those younger people, creating art spaces like us. And then others, like you're saying, are like, oh no, it's cutthroat. But, coming to that language of competition again, when Ellen and I started this podcast, and thank you for that invitation, because her Hodge Podge is so brilliant with this interdisciplinary focus, and then this feminine frequencies being under that umbrella. We were defining our terms in our first session, well, what do we mean by feminism? What do we mean? Well, we mean feminine archetype, both for masculine men and women, not just female exclusive. But so we had defined that, and we were talking about also other language, other definitions, right? Compassion. We were talking then about competition and collaboration, but not as clearly as we are now. And then you had this incredible sort of explosion of an insight because you're science fascinated, and so am I, neuroscience, about the mitochondria. I think I might have sent you the article, and you had already been on it, on that the cellular level of life and persistence and evolution is being challenged right now because it's not the best that wins. It's actually the mitochondria that come together and connect. And what I'm thinking is we have to redefine and reclaim competition. Competition in the sense that it's, yes, it's got edge and it's got community as the base of it. So it's not dominant so much as that it's how can I be my best? How can I cut this edge here and chisel out something that is a container for us? I was freaking out when the Knicks won. Do you know? I love a good game. So I'm like totally with you in terms of that definition. And I think maybe that's also what's driving us is we're searching for ways of figuring out how to make more resources, because the highest dominant competition comes and becomes war when resources are limited. That's when the most dominance comes. So maybe these paradigms are actually scaling them up, are like ways of thinking about how can we be together in healthier ways, still with our competitive desires to be the best we can be and to have certain moments of winning, but not to dominate, not to kill, not to erase others, not to other others, That's what gets me excited.
Scarcity is definitely the most important code word that you said, or whatever keyword of that, because like that's when we feel like, oh, there's not enough gigs, and now, oh, you're working there, you're teaching there, and then I'm not going to have anything. And I think for my own self, it was, realizing that I had my place in the world, whatever, like that I have my career and my path and my albums, and like finding that sense of security about myself as a professional, that kind of, because I'm very competitive, and but I, once I found my footing and I didn't feel that feeling of scarcity, but abundance. And I don't, I can feel like, jealous of other people's, oh, they got that gig or whatever, but also feel like, well, but I have enough gigs. I have my own carved out world, and that changed a lot of things for
I
me.
think
'Cause I definitely
sometimes the
in a lot.
jealousy is frustration. And, if since you're the kind of person, Alexis, that obviously you can hold others' successes, and the frustration is sometimes what we all experience because, we're working hard, and there's a part of us that wants to, I need my day in the sun too, right? So we have that. So sometimes I don't even think it's jealousy. I think it's more frustration. But I wanted to go back a minute. When I was going to start this up, I was going to read this thing that you brought up. Let me read this really quickly because it also gives people a sort of historical understanding of. But in 1967, a young biologist named Lynn Margulis, I think that's her name, proposed that the greatest leaps forward in the history of life came not from one organism defeating another, but from two becoming one. 15 scientific journals rejected her. What she had discovered was, I hope I say this right, endosymbiosis, the idea that the mitochondria in every cell of your body are the descendants of bacteria that stopped competing and started cooperating billions of years ago. She called it a scientific finding. We might call it the oldest feminine principle in nature. So that's what you were referring to. That's a scientific, principle.
On a cellular level,
Yeah. So we almost are fighting against our own selves when we do that. What comes down. It's kind of like what we're doing with nature. We fight against nature instead of working with nature.
Yeah.
And that's maybe why we get into trouble.
This is from an interview with Rosetta Wright that was posted on her website for her centennial. And I go back to it a lot because it was something that drove me. Where were the women? Were there women? Since I've been a jazz buff all my life, why is jazz a male domain? Weren't women interested, or weren't they involved? So I started hunting around and looking for the women. But were there only vocalists? Who were they? What were they singing about? It turns out they were there all the time. They weren't given attention or considered important. And I've uncovered, it started with me and Amy London sitting at the bar at the Katana going, well, okay, who are the writers? And we were going down the list. And now I keep an Excel sheet that's now in the thousands, both old and new.
Yeah, they're there.
Wow.
Of women writers and lyricists. And, even in the latest wave of songs that have entered the public domain, there is Kay Swift, there is Dorothy Fields, there is quite a few, and they've always been there. Yes, Duke Ellington had his own train, so did Bessie Smith.
Yeah,
that was the way that they battled the problems of gigging in the Deep South.
Yes.
Just the story and the stories of the bravery of the blues women of the 20s, who were also out and gay and suit wearing, pants wearing. It's really I call them jazz foremothers. And that's the other thing with diversity. They were always there. So it isn't just white, black. There's that men, women. The first show of a broad spectrum was women artists. When David went on vacation and I got to do another show, that included the men, and I started calling those slots the honorable mention slots. So that I make a point. I mean, male artists are always rewarded for including a woman writer.
Yeah.
And that runs the gamut from Kenny Barron and Tura O'Farrell and all, that they go out of their way. They find Michael Deese, or, I can, and they're not just their students. They are, everybody who has lauded Marion Williams, some incredible renditions of the Zodiac Suite. But, it's been as important for me to bring historical figures to light as it is to champion the new, the young,
Yeah, because they're on the shoulders of those people. And that's one of the things, this thing with, aging and the elderly. I mean, I think, Mary, you're my generation. It was like you wanted to be on the bandstand with the folks who had been around a long time. You wanted that, not just because they were great players, but you absorbed their experiences, you absorbed the stories, you absorbed all this. And my only concern is that I see a lot of younger people, and maybe I'm maybe wrong about this, but they're like wanting to go, and I get it, you want to create your own thing, that's fine, but there's almost like we want to disassociate from that, and it's like that's so important, because that's where the roots come from. That's the DNA that we're passing through. But and I know when I was a young singer, that's why I was interested in Jay Clayton and Sheila Jordan and Mark Murphy and all these folks, because they were like the path, that I was walking. I mean, I'm going to create my own path, but because of their path, I was able to create something or feel the support of people who had carved paths in really tough times too, to do it, as Mary, as you're alluding to. No matter, especially people of color, well, that was a really tough time for them, and it still is now. But I think that if we can understand that we all have, I like this idea of, Alexis, when you bring all these people together, that's really important, because we get to share stories, we get to share our experiences, we get to learn from each other, because I learn as much from the younger folks about what's going on as I hope they learn from me. It is not something that's separate. Again, a feminine principle that we come together as a group. I know the indigenous people, when they have their circle, it isn't just, it's everybody, the children, the women, the men, all ages. And that's important principle as well.
Good points. And Mary, did you want to respond to that? It sounded like you had an impulse. Something Ellen said.
All I can say is I can remember back in the Jazz Vocal Coalition, there was a division then between older and younger artists.
Wow.
And now that I am of a certain age, a woman with a past, a lot of that comes with time. A lot of that is something you're not going to really get hip to until you are older and have life experience And you kind of have to allow people to have their own journey, make their own discoveries. You know, I don't know, it goes back to my mom. You know, she said, when you travel, always pack snacks and a handkerchief and a journal.
Well, I hear that. And I also want to shout out to the educators, which I know everyone here is, because those of us who are I'm working with undergrads at NYU, and I've worked in other institutions as well. And I work professionally with people that are older and middle-aged and older. And I actually think that education, it's kind of like music appreciation or art appreciation. You can teach respect for legacy. You really can help people to appreciate. And I think there does perhaps need to be a bit of an intervention at times to say, and this is not a binary to what you're saying, Mary, which is give people space and let young people be in the place where they are, and we age into this wisdom. And I completely agree with that. I've also seen, young people suddenly get incredibly excited about, Coco Taylor. They didn't know about Alligator Records, and it like blows their mind. They hear all kinds of things they never heard before. Or in the theater where I teach, when they learn about the group theater, they're like, oh my God, I guess that's our mission, and they realize that the legacy actually, it's that not just that they're on the shoulders of these people. I think that's a good metaphor because it's like we're building something, but it's actually that it's instructive. It's really instructive. Like, what did they do? How were they working? What were their systems? Why did they have that longevity? Why was that so organic, So I do think education is key right now. And I do think there is a trend sometimes, ageism is part of it, to suppress. And it's kind of at the heart of the ailment that brought us to where we are now, which is
Morris Karnofsky was my teacher, and he said of the group theater, that education was a piece of it from the start.
Wow.
And when he was blacklisted in the 50s, he and Phoebe Brand worked. It's a big country in the Midwest. They taught, they did things, but they were out of the public eye.
Yeah.
Until John Houseman brought Morris to the Shakespeare at Stratford.
Incredible. That's such important history. And that's the kind of connection that you're making that I feel really goes to the heart of what we're looking at today, which is, at what point do you have the awakening that actually the things I'm doing are meaningful for social change, in a broader sense. I mean, we're doing it in the music, we're doing it together, but we're also doing something in society, gets to the fabric of society, what we're doing.
Have you felt as performers, I'll just throw it out there just because in the past year or so since the last election, when I've been in a performing situation, the part of you that is the most empathetic with your audience, the feeling is that the audience needs to be sung to. There's something they need now.
Yes.
And, and it isn't just your politics or your statement or I'm a dessert topping, I'm a floor polish. It's none of that, but it's like they need, I've just had this in different performance situations through my career, but people need something. Something a little more these days. We are in such volatile times. I don't know if you felt the same vibe in your travels.
Well, the arts are healing, period. And we know this now. I mean, there's a whole thing, neuro arts. And in actuality, all of the research that's been done has showed that the arts are healing. And they're actually in a point now where they're trying to prescribe arts as a prescription along with your doctor, that you have this. And also maybe you need to take a singing lesson, or maybe you need to go listen to some music, or maybe you need to take an art class. So I think then that naturally people are seeking out what heals them, nature, and the arts. I mean, that is a huge thing that I think at least our society has minimized in a lot of ways. I mean, we look at it in terms of, ooh, isn't that, wow, that's exciting. But on its core, it's what brings us together. It's what heals us. And I think that's probably what's happening now. There's a lot of anxiety out there. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of, and what music does on a frequency level, speaking of frequencies, it does have the capacity to neurologically affect our brains in a way where it can be an actual healing tool. So I think when people go out to hear music, it's the entrainment of coming together. That's why, feeling the groove. The groove isn't just a groove, it's fun. It creates entrainment in people when they're together. And so I think this is the importance of the arts in our particular category is music. And so I think that's a natural response for people in times of stress to go to music. And we really need it here because our culture is so, only the professionals can do it. And don't get me wrong, I think the professionals should be doing the professional stuff, but I think we've minimized people should be coming together. That's why the singing circles work so well, because people feel that. They don't know what it is, but they kind of get high off of it. They get elated because it does something. It actually physically, mentally, and emotionally and neurologically is doing something for them.
And historically, for 500 years, African Americans have been making music, right, in very much a response to tremendous oppression, right? We know that. And in our next segment, we do, or maybe not the exact next segment, but in future segments, we really want to create a room of voices that can speak to that. I mean, I'm a Caucasian woman. I don't have that experience, but I have other aspects of my lineage and my feminine identity that has exposed me to some of this oppression over time. Not the same. And so I think about that as well. I think about, the arts and the wisdom we can gain from listening to those historically oppressed voices as well, because really there's so much that they can teach me, us, those of us who are white or passing white. And I just wanted to put that out there because I know that that's something we've really thought about in this podcast is what is our position? What is our identity?
They call it programming with intent.
Yes, I love that. Patricia Nicholson Parker said that to me at a beautiful festival for improvisation that they were having at NYU. She said, if we want the diversity, we have to intend it. We have to do it on purpose. We have to create it. We have to have the consciousness. And to me, that's the ultimate feminine principle. As my own stepmother, who was a bra-burning second wave, but way on the intersectional third wave cusp, way ahead of her time, feminist, she said, feminism and the feminine frequency we're talking about is about human rights, and so it's not any one gender, it's all of us. And I think that what you're talking about in terms of this notion of the healing nature of the arts is ancient. It's the root of it. And we may be coming back to it in a particular way. And Mary, during the pandemic, I had an epiphany. Ayelet knows this because we spent hours talking about it. A sense of an identity crisis of what am I doing this for? Who needs this? What I want to give something. People are dying, millions of people. What does the art need to be now? And it really felt it needed to be loving human communion for me, just from where I was coming from. And it was a man's art, actually, who was holding the feminine frequency of principle, Taishan Sori, when I heard monochromatic light, that absolutely blew me away because he created a hive mind space. And we sat there at the armory and just connected in the way you're talking about. It was healing, and so I think what you're saying is so key, so key. I think it might even be what drives us, to create these communities, is it's such a soul-based. It's like you being in the cabin, Alexis. I so relate. I was here on the mountain with that guy, alone for that time, and really, really asking myself, who am I as well? And maybe that's the sort of mythological arc that, characterizes all of us, as we have these moments of great change in our personal lives, right? And we have awakenings, and then we want to give something in a different way. That's a very unique way to come into collaboration, and it's really unique.
Well, that was beautifully said, by the way. And I hate to be the person who says this, but I'm going to kind of wrap this up a little, because I know we've been talking for a while, and gosh, we could go on for hours and hours talking about all this. And I just want to give, before we close up, do any of you, Alexis or Ayelet or Mary, is there anything you'd like to say yeah.
I feel excited to share with you guys. This seems particularly topical, but I'm releasing my first album where I'm playing piano for myself.
Oh,
And
what's the name?
yeah, it's called Taking My Seat, A Musical Inheritance.
Love that.
And I recorded it during the pandemic. So it's been a while, but because I was leaving for Korea, and I thought, gosh, it was right before the election, and I kind of left on purpose before the election because I call it being a pre-fugee. Like my family already escaped depression, like in generations before, fleeing from Austria, from the Cossacks. And I just thought, no, I'm not doing that. I'll just get out of here before shit hits the fan. And but I volunteered, I did a lot of canvassing in Pennsylvania out at my cabin to hope that the election would go well. And it was so amazing to be in Korea watching, Biden get inaugurated. Just incredible. But anyway, I recorded with Kenny Hassler and David Fink because we'd been playing together for years, and David had a health scare. And between that, me leaving and the pandemic, I thought, I don't know if I'll get to play with these guys again. And we have something really special. So I recorded it, and I always thought, surely someday I'll be a better pianist and I can overdub my solos. The older, better me will overdub my solos, because of course it was the pandemic, right? And we weren't playing that much either. So I wasn't at my best, but I also, when am I going to be, am I going to ever, how much better can you be? Like, I don't know, anyway, releasing this album is such an act of radical acceptance, guys. It's really like exciting for me to get to the place where I'm like, fine with my playing. I'm making music. I have a statement. It's me. And also it doesn't, what standard am I trying to achieve? And I spend so much time telling singers, like, well, I don't encourage people. One woman came up to me recently and said, I'm going to record. I think I should at least take a few lessons first. I said, yeah, you should. It's a good idea to take a couple of voice lessons first before you make a record. Let's do that. Let's just agree. But anyway, it's okay, whatever. I try not to judge. But anyway, so I'm not trying to be like that. But I've taken years and years of lessons. I started when I was a kid. I've played so many more gigs. I've played thousands more gigs on the piano than I have just stand up singing. And saying I have a right, and I'm going to take that right. And it doesn't, I don't know, it just feels really special to me. I've turned 50 this year. There's something about that too. And so my new album is with me, and I feel I'm at my most I wrote all the arrangements for this album and a couple of original compositions. So Mary, you can play me on the show, and and I'm just really excited about it. So I have a couple of shows coming up in New York. I'm playing at the Deer Head, July 24th, and we're playing a Nanuet Library the 25th of July, and then the 31st, we're playing at the historic Lafayette Bar in Easton, Pennsylvania. And then the August 1st, we're at the Westchester Collaborative Theater. So that is effectively my little CD release tour with the guys, and the
Yay.
album is like imminently being ordered. So I'll have copies, and I am making physical copies, and I am gonna do a full release. So anyway, that's what's up for me as an artist. And I thought if I can just, I'm spending so much time between the Vocal Jazz Summit and Jazz Voice. It's a lot, and also teaching now, and I was in school last year at BMCC using my GI Bill and studying Spanish. Hey, it's a lot going on, and I don't maybe performing isn't have the space that it had in
Mhm.
my life prior. But I just thought if I can just release an album every other year or so, do at least 10 nice gigs a year, like I'm I don't it whoever I thought I had to be, I don't have to be that person. I'm enjoying my career. I'm making money. I'm making, enough money to live and support me and Paul and like, build for my future. I just I'm really I feel like taking the space to not have to be something, not have to be what I thought I had to be or something has been
Mm,
really productive for me. I'm not
mm,
leaving performing, like I'm making a concerted effort to go in a different direction, but also keep performing and keep
mhm,
doing what I love, but I'm not compelled in the same way. I don't know.
Hmm.
There's just a lot there, and it's all going along with my big birthday, and I'm just really happy that I've come to
Mm.
this conclusion. I'm also doing a show, speaking of women composers too, I'm doing a show of Val Hawk's music in October at Westbeth. She's my neighbor and an amazing songwriter.
Yes,
And
she
I'm
is.
so excited. I'm going to turn that, I'll do the show first, but my next record is probably going to be, oh, she has a great, as the music plays, the songs of Val Hawk, something like that. So I'm excited about lifting up her incredible voice. So those are what I'm working on now. And I'm not sure when this is airing, but I'm doing the Sunday Jam, Jocelyn's Sunday Jam on July 5th.
yeah,
And I'm going to be doing it live from Plant City, Florida at the Reagan
yeah.
Collective Gallery, a wonderful feminist space. I'm so excited to discover this place. And but you're all invited to come and sing online as well. It's Jocelyn's monthly jam that we Jazz Voice and the Vocal Jazz Summit
Yeah.
have sponsored it for the last few years, so it could
And
continue
yeah.
on. But
And
that's every
there's
Sunday morning.
other women and people who are creating spaces that we probably should quickly mention, like Ms. Sullivan, correct? The picnics. Did anyone go?
Oh, that was
I
a
think
ball.
yeah,
That
can you speak
was
to
a
that quickly?
ball.
Yeah.
Uh, Marianne just wanted, I mean, she's an educator and she's a performer, but she got the flash that she wanted to just have a party
Yeah.
and invite
Mm.
singers, and it was not going to be a vocal jam. It was just going to be singers eating and drinking and
Yeah.
yakking.
Nice.
And I mean, that is part of our power is that singers talk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that talk, as Alexis has proved time and time again, that was
Right.
the best thing about the change with this year's Jazz Summit, which I just attended virtually. But there was, so much information from the audience, and not just the platform of Jazz Voice and a certain kind of speaker and this and that, and somebody from the audience is like, well, I'm another product speaker myself, and so you like choices,
Yeah.
different technology. And instead of going way into nerd territory where people would just glaze over, it was
Yeah.
just like one from column A, one from column B. You're looking for graphics. Are you looking to edit sound? Are you looking to edit video? Go here, go there, go there. And it all throws you back to the Jazz Voice site, which
Yeah.
is a wealth of information.
You're
Yeah.
talking about the toolkit round, the tool
The tech tools,
tech
yeah,
toolkit roundtable that I hosted. Yes, that was so much fun.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just was quelling. It was so helpful because you never know until you get to a place what you need and when.
It's just a bounty, isn't it? There's such a bounty of stuff happening. I mean, Ayelet does these incredible workshops with dream work and, listening, deep listening. And Ellen just released an album. Oh my God.
Well, I just
Oh,
wanted to say, Alexis, I wanted to really congratulate you, and I really get what you're talking about because,
yeah.
your thing about playing the piano and not seeing yourself doing what being able to move in another direction. It's sort
Oh,
of like the
yeah.
Joni Mitchell when she did Mingus, and everybody wanted her to be whatever, but that's where her sheer. So yeah, I released this album. I don't think Mary would ever play this, although there is maybe one thing she could play, but it's all about it's all about and I composed all these things myself and working using technology, which who would have thought, and put out this thing and collaborated with a source of a guy who was been doing this for 40 years, working on brain entrainment, and so the whole album is based on the 5 elements of nature, and each element has a certain brainwave entrainment, and you can listen to it as a complete journey, or you can take it for what the brainwave entrainment is supposed to help you with. And this is like deep studies I've been doing for a long time, and I felt the same way as you. It's like, you kind of feel like, should I do this? Or, it's weird because your mind's been here. You're like in a box a little bit, even though jazz is like a very expressive language. It's like you feel like you're in a box, and especially for women doing anything like that, because we're the singers, and so it was a lot of freedom. I really connect with what you're saying. There's a freedom in allowing yourself to do that and just feel like this is what I want to do, and I don't really care what anybody else thinks, or I don't care if it makes money. This is what my heart, this is where I want to go. And so congratulations, because I've wanted to play the piano like for a long time. I play so horribly, and I'm so proud to hear you say that and put out a project. And I just think that's wonderful. And I want to support you and any of you here who are just going in any direction that maybe is not where you thought it was going to take you. Let it go. That's the intuitive part, right? And it brings us such joy because we discover another part of ourselves, So, Ayelet, how about you? What's going on, and what do you want? If anything you want to, say before we end up?
Thank you. In the Orchard of Pomegranates, every month we gather to share each other's works and processes, and that's a really nice little communion. So that happens on the third Tuesday on the first Tuesday of every month. Online, so everybody's very welcome. And then in my own practice, I'm working right now on developing my new idea for a new project with my band, and we're going to perform on September 2nd in Montreal at Petit Ours.
Little Legs.
What's that?
Is it Little Legs?
No, it's little bear.
Oh.
Petit Ours. Yeah. So we're gonna perform music from our previous album, and we're starting to dream up the new one, which is a very exciting moment in time.
Are you talking about the Dust album, the previous album?
Yeah.
Everybody has to listen. That's a journey, a beautiful journey. Like Ellen's arc, which is sound healing, and it's an arc. It's really quite extraordinary. Dust, yeah.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I have to you have to get into the mindset of what ends up on a radio show is like you're driving your car on the highway, and it's certain things can translate into the psyche, and others you're like, what the hell is it's just it's apples and oranges. It has nothing.
Mary, your curation is also an arc. I mean, I just feel like I'm sitting there and you're taking me on a journey. I swear to God, I'm like, ooh, I just went, on a journey with you. And it's so well done. I mean, the dynamics, the shifts, the contrast, the pacing, it's just so well done. So
that's what good radio should be.
Should do. Yeah.
And just reminding everybody that her show is on WFDU 89.1 FM, and which day of the week?
It streams. It's not something you can turn on from your car.
Oh,
you need to go online to WFDU.FM.
Okay.
It is on the
So,
HD2 channel, which is a streaming channel. You
yeah.
can
Okay.
find it on TuneIn Radio and iHeartRadio and Apple. But and
Cool.
also all the archives live at mixcloud.com/A Broad Spectrum. You can
So
friend me
people,
on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, and and people do.
and people can listen to it anytime. So
Sure.
because it's streaming, that's
Yep.
wonderful.
And I
Yep.
keep
And
watching your hands, and you keep making these beautiful shapes. You keep going like this, going like this, and going, let's end on that. It
well,
feels
actually, I
so
wanted to just circle back a minute because Ayelet is also
Yeah,
produces
I
Katie
just wanted to
Bull's
say
Katie Bull's.
exactly. I
So
just wanted
let's
to
talk
say
about that too.
that yeah. So part of the Orchard is a label where I feature mostly vocalists and different practices within the voice. And Katie is the most recent release, the Hope Etudes, and so beautiful.
It's a
I
beautiful album.
really, really hope you all listen to it.
I'll
It's
make some
amazing.
gestures.
Yes.
Oh.
Katie,
Yeah.
do you want to say anything about your project?
Oh, I mean, honestly, it's just the co-producing aspect of it is probably what I want to highlight, just in terms of our theme today. The essential need that I had to connect with an artist, Ayelet being the one who said, it's time, and also Jay Clayton said it's time. And I think about Alexis, it's time. It's like, put it out there, put that music out there. Had you not said that, I probably would have sat with it maybe a lot longer because of what I was going through. And then that catalyst and how we as females holding that frequency can be catalytic for each other, I just think it was so beautiful. It's about hope
Mm,
as a principle
incredible.
that must be also in action. It's very nonlinear. I sat at the piano and just speaking of the piano, I'm not going to be recording, but I hear you. That's my instrument. And I do feel like I just let it find me, I mean, I really sat in a meditative way and I said to myself, if I don't laugh or cry or have some human that happens, I will not get up. I will sit here because it was in a dark place, pandemic and even pre-pandemic in terms of the politics of how things were. I could see what was coming, actually. That's another story. So yeah, I think what we're doing in the community is coming back, and here's my gesture, similar to yours, is just trying to find, the spaces. Yeah. And Orchard for me felt like, wow, that is such a beautiful container. Such a beautiful container. I want to be in that. That feels healthy. So thank you,
I'm so glad
Ayelet.
you are.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to close with saying that the women in this group that people are listening to have been building these frequencies for decades. And in every space they created where someone could arrive imperfect, be witnessed, and leave more fully themselves. And that's more than we can hope for. So thank you all for being here and sharing your thoughts and your projects and your good feelings into the world, because that is what helps to bring positivity back to our world. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellen and Katie.
Thank you,
Thank
Ellen and
you.
Katie.
Thank all of you. And to the people listening, thank you, because I have a feeling there's a whole lot of you that want to make these communities or are making them. I'd love to just hear from all of you, in comments. Really, we could highlight that, right?
Mm-hmm. And check all these folks out, what they're doing. Ayelet, all I ask is that you make one a little later in the day. On your meetings. I want to go to your meetings, but it's always like it, I have to be.
For you, it's very early.
I know. So I'm the West Coaster over here. So
yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here, and
thank you.
keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.